as we go. Okay. Welcome to Aryeh and Zahava is watching, and my mother's in Japan currently after being in all over the place in Asia, so maybe she'll get a chance to watch the lesson. And to everybody else who watches, Shana Batsheva and David and Katie and Pitam, everyone who watches Zat Hashem, Shalom Aleichem to you. So, the Chaim. Before I start, and of course to Yael. Before I start, so I was sick last week, still slightly recovering, taking longer than I thought. I should say my Chavuta is also sick. To Avi, Shalom Aleichem. So refuah shlema to him, Aaron ben Chana Liba, and the merit of our learning tonight, Shev refuah shlema, I Shev refuah shlema, and everybody who needs a healing, B'ezrat Hashem, Shev refuah shlema. So, the lesson that we're learning, of course, is Torah Hey in Likutey Moharan. And to give you an overview of the lesson, he starts off b'chatzotot v'kol shofar, in the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah in the Beit HaMikdash. And that is the text that he begins the lesson with, Rabbi Nachman begins the lesson with, and then he says, Kol Adam tzarich ladat ula'amin shekol ha'olam lo nivra ela bishvilo or bishvila. Every person has to know and believe that the whole world was created for them. He says, if the whole world was created for you, then you have a special role to play in this world. You individually, every person has a special role to play, and you need to do what you can do while you're in this world, because that's why Hashem created the world. But it also means that you can daven, because the whole world was created for you. It doesn't mean that it takes away from anybody else, because everybody was created for them as well. But imagine if you were really like the God's son, okay? I know there's a whole religion about God's son. But imagine you were like the only creation. The whole world was created for Taylor Swift as well. Yes, and I think probably more for her than others, it seems. And so that means that you can daven for others. Imagine the whole world was really created for you. God that comes to you and says, hey, Barak, I created the whole world just for you. So then you would say, wow, I have quite a responsibility. You mean all these people here in the world, they're all like influenced by me? And God says, yeah, you can daven for them. This is what Rabbi Nachman is saying. You can daven for them. So he says, okay, so now we have this huge responsibility. We're capable of davening for other people. And he says, so there's the straightforward way of davening, and there's the davening after the judgment has been given. And so the straightforward davening is easy. Aryeh B'ezrat Hashem Shed Parnasa, health, shidduch, Torah, all the things that he wants, B'ezrat Hashem B'simcha, in an easy way. And everybody, whatever they need, that's the easy way of davening. But what happens if there's already a judgment in heaven? You can't daven directly for it. So I experienced this last week. You can see I'm still coughing from the flu. And last Tuesday, it's very funny. I really believed I was going to sit and give a lesson. There was no way in the world. I couldn't sit for 1 second. I also couldn't concentrate until probably, maybe even Sunday. I had a hard time counting change, focusing on the davening. I kept calling it Joe Biden. Every time I go through the shuk and somebody would tell me, a certain number, I just give them a big bill, throw all the change in my change purse and say Joe Biden, because Joe Biden has all these memory problems. I was really feeling like Joe Biden. And so there was no chance on Tuesday, but I said, okay, I have to have guests for Shabbos. So Noga was also sick. She said, don't invite more than 5 guests. So I invite 5 guests for Shabbos. And these are also guests that I know really need the company. And so it was extra special mitzvah. Some people have lots of friends and some people less so. So not to, God forbid, offend anyone, but I really think about certain people and how they need the meal. And then I said, okay, Hashem, I invited all these guests. Now you have to heal me so that I can host the guests. And while you're at it, why don't you give me a voice to lead the davening? Because Friday morning I had no voice. Friday afternoon I had no voice. But by the time Friday night came, I had a voice. Wasn't the strongest voice, but I had a voice. I led through the whole davening. People could hear me. And I was really living on a miracle, like a miracle on Shabbos. And the Shabbos cooking, I cooked it Thursday. I went shopping Thursday afternoon because that was the only time I had the strength to even go to the shuk. I cooked in the middle of the night. I had my eyes closed. I didn't even know what I was doing. And Friday night I look in here, there's a whole meal that's cooked. It was like a miracle. So this was my roundabout way of davening for my refuah shlema. By saying, Hashem, here, if I invited guests for Shabbos, and these are guests that need the meal, then of course you're going to heal me, and Hashem healed me. So that's what Rabbi Nachman says, that we can daven in a roundabout way. Like the story that I told about the Rebbe that only eats in a home where there's children. And so he says, okay, so now we know the whole world was created for us. We have the responsibility to daven. Sometimes it can daven straightforward, and sometimes we have to daven in a roundabout way. But how do we really, really get good davening in? You have to have a straight heart. And how does our heart get corrupted? By the world, simply by the difficulties of living in this world. And we forget that Hashem is running the world, and we allow just normal logic and reason to run our lives. And we really believe that the bank is running the world, or the area is running the world, or my boss is running the world. And we forget that Hashem is running the world. And so he says you have to create this thunder in your heart that reaches your mind, that straightens out the crookedness in your heart. And how do you do that? And that's what we're talking about now. Okay, so that's pretty much where we are in the lesson. And that's what we've been talking about. We talked about doing the mitzvot b'simcha, with joy. And Shalom to Yaakov. Okay, so now, da'achar shebi'er sheyeshnam shnei dvarim hamafsidim et hakol shel hamitpalel litzor ha'amim b'mocho sheyashru et libo. after Rabbi Nachman clarified that there's two types of speech that cause the sound that comes out of the person davening to not make the thunder in their brain, which straightens out their heart. Echad yira nefula. The first is a fallen fear. Hagoremet lekach, that causes she'akol lo yuchal latzet me'alev, that the sound doesn't come out of a person's heart, ela kaneh, to the windpipe, la'asot ram b'moach, to make the thunder in a person's heart. So the first is yira nefula, which means that any fear that's not a fear of Hashem, any fear, even if a fear of an animal comes running at you, any fear that you have, a fear of authority, a fear of what people will think about you, all of these things Rabbi Nachman considers fallen fears. Because the only thing to fear is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And so when you have fallen fears, they kind of pile up and get in the way of you davening properly. Because instead of davening straight to Hashem, you're worried about the whole list of things that anybody would be worried about. So he says you got to work on pushing those fears aside. Vasheni, and the second is chokhmot chitzoniot v'ta'avot, external wisdom and desires. Ha'otmot et hasechel, that block a person's intellect, shelo yachol levatzer bo ram, so the person can't make the thunder. Yivaer ata shemibein shtei haraot halalu. It's going to clarify now that between these two evil things, hara'ah ha'ikarit shetzarich lishmor mimena, the main evil that a person has to guard themselves from, hi shelo yachmitz mocho b'chokhmot chitzoniyot v'ta'avot, so that a person's mind won't become chametz, won't become corrupted by external wisdom and desires. Ki az lo yachol lekabel et hatikun sheosim hatzadikim b'machloket shelahem, because then a person won't be able to receive the fixing that's done when the tzadikim argue with one another. La'afoch et chametz lamatzah, to change chametz, which is forbidden, to matzah, which is permitted. Ule'elachem b'sitra achra, and to fight the evil energy or the yetzer hara, the evil inclination, ki yachshov shehi machloket mamish, because the evil inclination will try to tell a person that the fighting between two tzaddikim is actually a fight and not really cover for being able to fix trying to remove the external wisdom and the desires in your heart. Masha'en ken pgam yirat halev. Nonetheless, or all the more so, damage in the fear of a person's heart, yira nefula, a fallen fear, ze yachol yitaken al yedei machloket ben tzadikim. This can be fixed through the argument that one overhears between tzadikim. Hamashiva meyira ra'ah, that returns a person from bad fear, mikol pagum, from a damaged voice or damaged sound, le yirah tova lekol tov, to a proper fear and to a good voice. So you understand what he's saying here. That you have to be open to being able to hear an argument of tzaddikim. The argument of the tzaddikim is actually covering up the fixing that you need for straightening out your heart in order for you to daven properly. And the thing that's preventing it is a fallen fear. V'ikar, and the main thing, klomar, that is to say, mishnei dvarim shehizhir le'ir, that he mentioned above, yira nefula shebalev, from the fallen fear that's in the heart, mechokhmot chitzoniot shebemoach, from the external wisdom that's in the brain, Ha'ikar lishmo mocho shelo yachmitz. You have to protect your mind so that it won't become chametz, so that it won't turn sour. Meaning that you won't become cynical, and you won't become bitter, and you'll just get to the point where you say, there's no God, really. A person that gets to that point, they can't daven properly. If you can't daven properly, you're giving up on this incredible tool for being able to connect to Hashem and for being able to fix your own heart. Don't try not to allow external wisdom and desires to enter your heart. And this is what's written. So I'll just give you a very simple example. There's a guy who's a fan of my podcast, and he's been buying lottery tickets for me. Now, I don't buy lottery tickets out of principle, because if Hashem wants to send me money, what do I go to work for? I have all kinds of ways of Hashem sending me money. I don't need a lottery ticket. And also, I think it's just bad behavior in general. I don't even like handing in the tickets. He always loses money, I lose money, but he gave me the tickets. If you just give me the cash, I would have made a lot more money than what I get from the tickets. But that's something that can really mess a person up. I mean, now I have to go and hand in these tickets. So I see for like the 30 seconds that I'm standing there, very sick people. Everybody knows how these stupid cards work, and they want this combination with that one, and they want this with that, and they win 20 shekels, they put it right back down. This is a tava. This is a desire. An unholy, an unhealthy desire. And so if you have a desire for buying lottery tickets, you really have to tell yourself, don't buy the ticket. And fight that. That's what he's talking about. Because here is a little habit that can turn into a huge stumbling block. It could be other things as well. Everybody has their own thing, but that's just something that I've been experiencing. And thank God I don't have any addiction to buying another ticket. Even if I win 10 shekels from these stupid cards, I take the 10 shekels. I don't buy another card ever as a matter of principle. I think, one time there was some huge lottery, 100 million shekels, so maybe I bought one ticket for that. That's okay. If it turns into a regular thing, it's not okay. Okay, v'zeu shekatuv, and this is what's written, Ga'ar chet kaneh. This is a quote from the Zohar, and I don't remember what was it? Ga'ar, he rebuked, chayat kaneh, the animal that was in the reed. But from this he's going to explain. What's he going to say from here? Tishaber v'ta'aseh mimena hey. That you should break the chet and make it into a hey. Because what's the difference between chametz and matzah? It's only one letter, and that's the chet and the hey. So if a person breaks the chet, and the chet obviously is the transgression, you break the chet in the word chametz, you'll get matzah. And through that, he's saying, you make an effort to break these desires that are causing you to be distant from Hashem, you'll go from something that's forbidden to something that's permitted. Okay, I'm skipping over a bit of the section here because that's the idea that he wants to say, but he really goes very deep into it. And then he mentions, miriva. So where's the miriva? The argument. V'zeu lashon gar lashon miriva, comes from strife. Ki matzah lashon miriva, because matzah comes from, is connected to strife. Anshe mitzvotecha yu ke'en. He gives a quote here to show that matzah is connected to strife. And what does he want to say with the strife? Atzadikim osim meriva ima sitra achra. The tzadikim basically battle against the evil inclination, kedei shelo titkarev lemishkan hakdusha, so that it won't come to the holy Mishkan. V'al yedei zeh megarshim hatzadikim et hachametz me mochacha. And through their arguments, the tzadikim push away the chametz that's in your brain. Ki moach ha'isha Yisraeli hu makom mishkan hakdusha, because the brain of a Jewish person is a holy place. Sheken sham mishkan ha-neshama. And that's the place where the soul resides, in the brain. So what does it mean, an argument between tzaddikim? I'm guessing Satmar and Chabad, that type of argument, or maybe in the old days when tzaddikim used to get together more often and they would actually argue about halacha. If a person were to overhear the conversation of the tzaddikim, even though it might sound like an actual argument, it's actually a ruse for distracting the evil inclination of the world and allowing your brain to be purified by their arguments. Haino bi'or inyan lemaaseh. That is, let's explain this in a practical way. Kshetishmo et chokhmatcha shelo yikanes bo chokhmot chitzoniyot. If you make an effort to not allow external, non-Jewish concepts to enter into your brain, shelo teharher behihurim ra'im, and you'll try not to have evil, negative, depressing thoughts, shem b'chinat kaneh, the sitra achra, that this is an aspect of the reed or of the windpipe of the evil inclination, kaneh hasmoli shel ot chet, that is to say, the left line of the chet, keneged kaneh chokhmah v'chokhmah kaneh bina, dikdusha, that juxtaposes the reed of wisdom and the reed of holy wisdom. Of understanding and holy wisdom. Ki kol b'chinash yeshba ze l'umat ze, because everything has one thing juxtaposing the other. Keneged kaneh dikdusha yeshna b'china kanesher sitra achra. Just like there's the reed or the windpipe of holiness, there's the same for the evil inclination. And when you fight the evil inclination, to remove the evil thoughts and of the desires that entered into your brain, that you shouldn't return and think about those thoughts again. Shelo tilamed chokhmot, that you shouldn't learn non-Jewish concepts. Al yedei zeh tinatzel mebchinat chametz. Then you'll be saved from this idea of chametz. Shehi sitra demota, which comes from tzad hamavet, from the side of death. Because ultimately, what does the evil inclination want to do? It wants to kill you while you're still alive. And how does it do that? By making you depressed. It comes and it says, you're not good. You're not good at this, you're not good at that. And then you say, you know what, you're right, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. And the next thing you know, you're just putting yourself down, and somebody comes by and says, hey, doesn't Rabbi Nachman say, Yivdu Hashem b'simcha, that you should serve Hashem with joy? And you're like, yeah, that's very nice, but I have no joy in me whatsoever. Could the Rebbe be talking about machloket in the Gemara, Rishonim? I think he's really talking about a machloket between tzaddikim, like in person. That you have to remember, at the time that Rabbi Nachman was around, there were many tzaddikim, many great tzaddikim. I don't think we have even one tzaddik alive today compared to all the tzaddikim that were alive in the time of Rabbi Nachman. We're talking about the Alter Rebbe, and we're talking about Rabbi Elimelech of the Zhanks, and of course Rabbi Nachman. I mean, huge tzaddikim, and these guys would get together and they would have disagreements. And a person that doesn't understand that the disagreements are actually a way of fighting the evil inclination would hear them and they would think, wow, these tzaddikim are actually disagreeing with one another. But what Rabbi Nachman is saying is that when you overhear a disagreement with tzaddikim, it is a tikkun, it's a fixing for the crookedness in your heart, and it can actually straighten things out for you. Now, there's lots of stories. There's a story of the Baal Shem Tov, where the Baal Shem Tov told the story before. The everyday conversations of just anyone, the tzaddikim on the level of the Baal Shem Tov could read words of Torah in everyday conversations. And there was a misnagid that came to the Baal Shem Tov, and he said, I heard this concept, and I don't believe it. I think it's a bunch of nonsense. At that moment, apparently the Baal Shem Tov had a window right next to his desk. There was a guy that fixes barrels. So he had all these rings for fixing barrels and a hammer and wood. And he said, do your barrels need fixing? And the Baal Shem Tov said, no, my barrels don't need fixing. And he said, maybe my friend's barrels need fixing. And the misnagid is like, what do you mean? I don't have any barrels here. And leave us alone. I'm trying to talk with the rabbi. And the Baal Shem Tov said, you see, that was a message from Hashem. What is he asking? Not if your barrels need fixing, but do your vessels for receiving Hashem, do they need fixing? And they said, mine don't, but maybe yours do. And he said, this sounds like a bunch of nonsense to me. And the Baal Shem Tov said, if you wanted to become a chassid, you could. And he said, maybe, but I don't think that I could do it. I don't think I'd have the guts to actually become a chassid. And on his way out, there's a guy who's has a wagon of bricks. And one of the axles broke, and a bunch of the bricks fell off the wagon. And the guy is shouting at this misnagid, come and help me pick up the bricks. And he said, I can't. And the guy said, you see, that's the problem with all of you Jews. If you want to, you can. If you don't want to, you can't. He said, I need you to help me, so come and help me pick up the bricks. And then he said, this was a lesson like the Baal Shem Tov just told me. And he goes back into the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov says, no, what did you learn? He said, I saw the goy outside with the bricks that fell off the wagon, and I understood that he said, if I want to become a chassid, I can. And if I don't want to, then I won't. And so with that, he became a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, where in the world are you getting these Torah concepts from? You have to be on a very high level. So imagine when two tzaddikim on such a level are arguing with one another, and you're sitting there and overhearing the argument. What he's trying to say is that it's such a powerful thing to hear the argument of tzaddikim, especially if you know that it's really in order to help you, that if you're open to it, you'll leave that space of the argument between the tzaddikim, having fixed something in your heart that then allows you to daven in a way that straightens out the crookedness in your heart, which enables you to daven for another person, which is the purpose that the whole world was created and why you were created. So I think that's the idea. I think the rabbis in the Gemara is very nice, but here he's actually talking about overhearing an argument between tzaddikim and the power of it. Okay, so he says that when you fight these thoughts and when you make an effort to remove the chametz that's in your brain, then you allow yourself to reach a point where you can daven. Instead of from chametz, you daven from matzah. And he's bringing another text proof here. Nimtza she'al yedei matzah u'meriva she'osim im hasitra achra. So by fighting the evil inclination, shehem hahirurim hara'im haba'im lemocho, that these are the evil thoughts that come into a person's brain, v'nincham shelo leharher behem, and you fight to not think about these things. So I'll give you an example. He's saying, the Yetzer Hara comes and says, Barak, you are lo tov. You are worthless. You done nothing in your life. And this is what my Yetzer Hara will come and say. And then I'll say, no, it's not true. I have done some things. It's like, what? Prove it. Just the fact that you're fighting back against the Yetzer Hara, that is the turning chametz to matzah. It's like you're kneading the dough of the matzah in a way, and you're getting out the chametz. Zoche levatel et hachametz shehu mavet. When a person fights back against these thoughts, they merit to nullify the chametz, which is connected to death. Ve'az sichlo ne'epach mechametz lematzah, and then a person's brain or their mind turns from chametz to matzah, v'zoche lemoach naki v'tohor, and then they merit to have a clean and pure mind. So Zahava says, I recently learned that we can do tshuva for others by davening for them. I think that I didn't know that you can do tshuva for others, but I know that you can help people to come to tshuva by davening for them. And that's definitely related to what we're saying here. If you know a person that needs to do tshuva, you daven for them to do tshuva. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we have this, I don't remember where the lesson was, but we did learn this lesson in one of the hundreds back in the old days, where he talks, it's Dan Kol Adam L'Chaf Zchut, the lesson where he says, judge every person positively. And Rabbi Nachman talks about when you judge a person positively, you actually bring out the scales of justice in heaven for them. And when you judge them, they're being judged. And if they receive the positive judgment that you're giving them, then they're judged positively in heaven. And if they reject it, then it's rejected in heaven. So by davening for a person to do tshuva, you actually open the gates of heaven for them to be able to do tshuva. Okay, so send it to me. Okay, we're going to finish up in a few minutes because I'm not doing as good as I would like to. So I just want to read the next section where we're going, then I've got a short story. Mekevan she'akoach le'lechem im ha'machshavot hazarot v'hirurim v'ta'avot. Since the energy to fight against the evil thoughts, or the negative thoughts, and the desires, uksha moach naki, it comes when a person's brain is clean. Umishik fer pagam, and somebody who already has a damaged brain, or mind I'm really talking about, kasher alav hadavar ma'od. This thing is very difficult for that person. Lachen, therefore, tzadikim oskim b'milchama zo bishvelo. And so the tzadikim are toiling in this war for this person. B'zeu b'chinat machloket shebein tzadikim hashleimim. And this is the aspect of it, an argument between complete tzadikim. Uma shemutal aleihem, and what is given to them, hu la'amin shezeu kol inyan machlotam rak kedei legeresh et hasichra achra. What is a person obligated to do? That person is obligated to believe that the argument between the tzaddikim is only in order to banish the evil inclination, v'lo al davar acher chas v'shalom, and not about something else, God forbid. Which means that any time you have tzaddikim that think that their Rebbe believes one thing and another Rebbe believes another thing, and they actually get to the point where they're maybe even fighting with one another, they completely lost the concept. And of course, stuff like that has happened. The purpose of tzaddikim disagreeing with one another is to, in a sense, clear the air. I guess we have examples now in Gaza. They want to level the war, the battlefield. The tzaddikim are fighting with one another, in quotes, in order to level the battlefield so that it's easier to walk there and fight what you need to fight. Okay, so we'll continue Be'ezrat Hashem next week. After the Lubavitcher Rebbe became Rebbe in 1951, the Rashag, who was the Rebbe's brother-in-law, so there was a disagreement in Chabad who was going to be the Rebbe. And this Rashag was Rabbi Guari, who was I believe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's brother-in-law, his wife's brother. No? Who was it?
His wife's sister's husband.
Oh, even better. All right, because there were two girls. His wife's sister's husband. Thank you very much. And I know that the mother-in-law or something like that held the Rebbe Shtreimel. After he died, the Rebbe said, fine, I don't need a Shtreimel, and that's why Chabad stopped wearing Shtreimel. But they still wear them, the Yerushalmim still wear them. Okay. So the Rashag was the brother-in-law by the second sister of the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe. And so he went to Chicago after the Rebbe died, and when the new Rebbe became Rebbe a year later, in 1951, to raise money for the yeshiva. And there was one person who was a generous supporter of the yeshiva. Instead of giving a large donation that he usually gave, he gave only $18. And the Rashag knew that the yeshiva needed the money. And so he asked the man, why are you not giving your usual donation? Rabbi Guari, this donation I gave to all the institutions I respect. And I gave so much more previously because of my tremendous respect and reverence for your father-in-law, the Rebbe. I loved him and I would do anything for him and his institution. But now that the illustrious Rebbe is no longer living with us, I give you my regular donation. So knowing that the yeshiva was desperate, the Rashag makes a call to New York to speak with his brother-in-law, the new Rebbe. So I guess the wealthy guy got on the phone, and the response was, the Rebbe said that it's the same neshama, the same soul, just in a different body. And the man was so overcome that he immediately gave his regular large donation and continued to do so in the coming years. Just mind-blowing. The Rebbe is a soul. And before the Rebbe became the Rebbe, he was himself. But after he became the Rebbe, he was the same soul as his father-in-law who had passed away. And of course we know that the last Lubavitcher Rebbe had probably a greater impact than any of the former Rebbes, each of them in their own right, but I don't think anyone comes close to what the last Lubavitcher Rebbe did. So this guy made a smart choice. Okay, Shekoach everyone. Let's sing a little Nikun, and we'll continue again next week. Be'ezrat Hashem. What are we going to sing? I should move the microphone. Otherwise you can't hear the guitar. Let's go. Lesson is you just keep going.
Then you'll figure it out when you get there.
Figure out when you get there.